Welcome to the Aegance Offscript Podcast, where we talk to industry leaders who share their stories, insights, and lessons, unfiltered and unscripted. I'm your host, Lawrence, and today I'm joined by Ziad Makhzoumi, CEO of Prime Strategy Consulting Group. Now, Ziad and his team help private and family-owned firms navigate the toughest transitions, from restructuring and turnarounds to mergers, divestments, and strategic execution. Ziad, welcome to the podcast. Really glad to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
I position Prime Strategy Consulting Group, but I'm sure that you can give us a lot more context around what it is that you do and what are your areas of operations.
Well, when I finished my business school many decades ago, before lots of people didn't even know what an MBA was, I was headhunted by Booz Allen, then the biggest the biggest consulting group in the world. As you know now, most of it doesn't exist. It's in bits and pieces. The whole consulting sector is going through major restructuring because part of the problem is we spend 6 months telling you what the problem is, and if you want us to help you, we'll charge you a lot of money, basically. My approach in the last 25 years is that no, I will go in and give you a strategy that we can both agree how to measure its outcome. And I will help you understand how things are done. So when I leave, there isn't a gap and the work has already been done. So the approach is hands-on coaching, strategic alignment, very clear deliverables that we both agree that we got there. And at the same time, measuring what is missing from your team or your resources and done it. And there are many examples of that on mergers and acquisitions, on startups, on whatever. I mean, I'm involved in lots of entities. 10 years ago, we built and sold the biggest group of infertility clinics, although it was one clinic, but we built it up and sold it in less than 30 months for over $500 million, basically. But that's because we knew exactly what the acquirer is looking for, why they're ready to pay a high premium. And when we started negotiations, we knew exactly how it would affect their P&L and balance sheet if they make the acquisition. I mean, they eventually bought us at 14 times. They were trading at 49 times. They offered 6 times. My answer is go fly a kite. They accepted to pay 14 because that acquisition increased their market cap by $2.5 billion, basically. So we go in as small as possible. I mean, there is another company I'm involved in where they do. Technically, I mean, without undermining what they do, because it's brilliant what they do, they take a bunch of documents, clean them up, and fill a form for you so you can make your claim. It's as simple. Of course, it's not as simple as that. So it is document scrubbing, but looking at the right data using AI, basically. But the advantage with that is when you put an insurance claim against a building damage, instead of sending it to a loss adjuster that takes hours to review at the cost of $30 per hour in the US, we can do it in less than 10 minutes at a cost of $10 per transaction, subject to how many pages you use, basically. So you can see how the numbers build up. And when we did that and we offered it to insurance company, initially they were skeptical. Then they found out, well, we have no choice but to use it because our overheads are people and systems and processes, and definitely accuracy and fraud in some cases, basically. And then when we sat down and we said, right, how can we make it more effective? We teamed in with another AI-based drone company that can go in and take a video of everything that happened inside and out. So you can see how the cycle and the customer journey has moved from, let me wait 6 months till I said somebody who can go to that damage and get it done, where we're using all the technology and AI-based so you can move it. So, we get involved at the early stages of any problem that you have. And if you're ready to solve it with us, we'll help you do it. And this is where we are different than most consulting firms. I mean, McKinsey, Accenture, and all the others, they go in and spend days and a whole team trying to analyze data, which currently now, if you have it, you can analyze it using AI, to be quite honest. But you have to make sure that you collect it very well. So our advantage is we go in with a very detailed strategy that measures everything and puts it all together. And I would say coming up with a strategy that will add value, basically, is not complicated, but it's complex because you have to put the right parts together so they click. Otherwise, you just say, what the hell is going on? It's not working. That is our advantage. And this is how I see consulting. So it's human, it's systems, it's processes, it's AI, it's technology.
Yeah, super interesting. And when you think about your role as the CEO today, what's the vision that keeps you moving forward?
Well, I mean, I love to put new things together. I'm like a chef who creates new recipes. So you give me a new sector and I say I was done. So we were in healthcare before I was in construction. Before that, I was in fund management, in the 80s, well, late 80s, when we had the crash in London. We started City of London Investment Group, and we were specializing in investment trust. And we had the reputation of being the trust busters, where they were trading at, it's a 10-year plan. You get a discount, you take them, you sell the assets, you clear the discount. So we're making millions weekly on just going and looking the value is, restructuring it and put it together. So what keeps me going is looking for new ideas. And sometimes I get frustrated that people cannot see what I see, and they just want to go back and do, but okay, don't talk to me if you don't want to listen to what I'm giving you advice. But I also like to transfer that know-how and approach to many generations. So I teach in a business school. I sit on the board of my old university, which is Manchester University, because I want even the education system to change the way we think. I believe everybody should think like an entrepreneur. In a sense, there is an objective and there's a measurable outcome and there is value if you achieve that. Of course, you have to add to it the ethical part and the moral, social part and so on. I don't concentrate too much on saving the environment because it's not my job to do so. I don't develop a system that will cure cancer because it's not my job to do so. But my job is to tell you there's something wrong and this is what I recommend you do. But then the decision, you have to take ownership of what we're doing. Otherwise, it will not work.
And what would you say has changed in how you lead today when compared to when you first started Prime Strategy?
Well, many reasons. I mean, many ways or many technologies have changed. In my days when we started, we used to use one laptop that can only have, let's say, half a gigabyte on it. And it takes hours for the spreadsheet to analyze and do things. When I was at my last year, I attended the board meeting in person in my old university. And when we looked at the computing center, which used to be a big building, and used to manage the Northwest Police and the 3 universities and the students and the engineering and research. That processor of the IBM machine is not even half as fast as your iPhone at the moment. So your processing of data has grown substantially, but your interpretation of data has been skewed badly. This is why if you look at digital media and collection of data. So to me, the ability to clearly filter that information with this vast amount of data and the processing system will give you substantial advantage. But don't be biased. Go back to basics and say this doesn't make sense. So again, we didn't have mobile phones. We didn't have laptops. We didn't have mobile communication. We didn't have digital data. We didn't have tracking system. I mean, one of my companies developed the first tracking system before even Google existed. And the partner says, this is a useless technology. Why do we need it? For example, this type of thing. So it's perception, it's availability, it's data, it's speed of processing, and the advantage of having better quality data, but the disadvantage of not even recognizing the difference of what we're doing. So this is what has changed. I mean, the world is bigger. I mean, 50 years ago, we probably were about 1.5 billion less people on this earth anyway. We didn't have a billionaire. Now we have trillionaire companies, basically. So that has changed in that sense. How we look at value, how we create value, our expectations have changed. If you look at digital media, you can have a 20-year-old with 15 million followers who can possibly instruct them to do something good or bad. In my days, it didn't exist, And then in theory, on the digital media, you have supposedly hundreds of billions of billionaires. Well, in real life, there's only 2 billionaires, but they still think that is so. The magnitude of understanding has changed. Our perception of reality is multiplied threefold. Our expectations are beyond control, basically. But this, again, if you ask me, when you ask the first question, I love chaos where everybody is confused because I can see something that is great and I go for it and pick it up without people noticing. And this is what has changed. And the processing has changed. Data is readily available, but its ability to understand and not be lazy and depend on other people tell us what's wrong. And this is what is happening. I think it has implication on healthcare. It has implication on creating value. I mean, Apple now is a $3 trillion company. If you look at Tesla, if you look at all the others. So we have to change our education system. We have to change the way we look at things. And this is where people like me or my consultants say, okay, guys, snap out of it. This is the basics. At the end of the day, you need financial cash flow. You need value. Let's see what you create, and this is what has changed in my view.
And how do you manage to balance your time between high-level strategy and being close to client execution?
Oh, I love going in that level. I mean, I could be in meetings and I'll just go in and just go and visit the factory and ask them what's in that bottle, or how do you do this? Because I'm curious but that's my engineering background. That's my mathematician coming out. I want formulas. I want trends. I want cycles. I want predictability and so on. I like to read a lot, and I attend lots of workshops, and I listen to people, and people come to me and say, we have this project, but we can't afford you. And I said, well, engage me. If I like it, you don't have to pay, because if I can learn something from you, how you do things as a baker or as a driver or whatever it is, that'll be great. Because to me, another angle is innovation is using something that works possibly in a different circumstance. It doesn't have to be brand new. And if you look at telephones, if you look at Google Maps, if you look at Uber, we used to call a landline, and somebody on a radio would contact somebody else who has a radio, which is a simplex, because it's a one-way, it's not a duplex. And they'd say, yeah, I'm on the street. And they say, how about this building? Can you pick it up? They call them, they call you. What has changed? Nothing, except technology have removed this element of connectivity where it connects you directly. And this is what has changed. And if people can think that way, instead of saying technology is my enemy, or I can't do this, I can't do that, we have to change. So to me, education and preparing the new generation, all my friends, when they talk to me, say, my kid is like 16, 17, what do you think they should do? And I say they should be experts on AI, because if not, they'd be out of a job, because AI would replace them at some stage anyway. So if they master that tool, at least they can control it in that sense, and so on. So this is how things are changing. And this is where I always encourage people to think. And I always like to go and learn. So if I see something on the street, if I see dancers, I see musicians, I mean, I did a reel on the harmony of music. It's like a strategy, because you've got all these harmonics and sounds in chaos. You put them all together and you come up with an amazing symphony of things that will move you or anger you or drive you. So on. And this is the basis of a strategy. There's a human element, there is a process, and there is numbers. I mean, when we talk about numbers, to me, I always push to something. I mean, we talk about emotional intelligence, we talk about artificial intelligence. No, I want to talk about financial intelligence, because this is based on data. If you understand it and your whole organization understands it, you will succeed and you deliver quality all the time. In our clinics, let's say, that we're building now in Europe, the front desk manager must own that business. They must be able to convince people. They must be able to make people feel great when they come in, and not just say, wait a minute, I'm busy. This is the kind of thing. It's the attitude that we're talking about. And I love to learn and observe and take whatever works and put it somewhere else.
So it sounds like you try to balance the high-level strategy and being close to client execution 50-50. Do you delegate or structure oversight so that you aren't stretched too thin?
I do. I mean, this is why the first thing I do, I bring in the right people to be able to understand what we're doing, and we have alignment. Otherwise, I spend my time explaining to my team what's expected, let alone expect the other client who have possibly are in chaos or not clear what their expectations are, or as confused or concerned or worried so whatever it is. So yes, I work on both sides. And I need, as I said, this complex structure that we're putting together. I need to understand every part of it. Otherwise, I cannot advise on it. And my team has to understand it, probably not as detailed as me, but should be able to understand the bit that, they will fit in nicely when I tell them, okay, let's bolt it all together. So the choice of team is there. I'll give you one example. And In 2008, I was hired to come in and restructure one of the biggest listed construction companies in the Middle East because they were having issue, but it had effects on the stock market because it was the biggest listed company. And the real estate sector is the biggest sector in Dubai in that sense, basically. And my background, of course, is finance. My background, of course, I have an engineering degree. But the process of going in and explaining all these bits together and getting everything work and explain to the engineers that if you don't give me your financial results on a weekly basis, my share price will get damaged and my 38,000 investors will suffer. This is the bit that we had to put together and explain to people why it works. Now, the other thing, when we looked at the business, we said, really, I mean, if you look at, of course, the 80-20 rule to me is misleading, but I say, look, the majority of the value you create is on the project management side and not on the construction. So when we went through all the assets, okay, I have 250 cranes, 10 of them can do 100 tons per shift. Well, how many projects do I use 100 tons? One in 2 years, sell it and rent it. This is the type of thing. So you go into details, but you have to explain to the people. So when they look and they tell you, oh, by the way, did you know that let's see how we can work it out. And this is, to me, how it works. So we went from a general contracting company to basically a project management type of value company. Then you can use your assets more effectively. And this is what works in business. So if I give you an example, I mean, now we don't have an HR manager in the clinics in Europe. We outsourced all that completely because we don't need it in that sense. You say, what if? No, the regulation is clear. Why do I need to do it this way? And you can see all the consulting firms, Pricewaterhouse, Young, and McKinsey, also are getting rid of the research side that could be replaced by a system and a process, provided it's accurate.
And if we have a look internally at Prime Strategy, can you walk us through a strategic pivot or innovation that you initiated that's changed the firm's trajectory?
Well, I mean, I tell people, first of all, don't just look at the balance sheet. Also go and talk to the people and see for yourself. So you can't tell me this company is good or bad if you don't know what they do. You can't tell me if they're efficient or not efficient if you don't go and visit their warehouse. In construction, I said, if I don't see your shoes dusty and dirty, it means what you tell me is not relevant, basically. So go to the site, go and talk to the people, watch, observe, put the whole process together in that sense. And to me, this is very, very important. And again, at the end of the day, startup, family, it's people. First generation, brilliant leader, fantastic. They are the patriarch or the matriarch, and they can make all the decisions. But nothing can go wrong because they can sort it out or take the risk. Get a second generation of 4 or 5 siblings. What will happen next? Let alone the 5 or 6 siblings will have another 20 or 30 siblings. Plus cousins, plus. I mean, I'm working with some of the big firms at the moment. And we said the issue is not having a system. The issue is not having a charter. The issue is not have an articles of incorporation. It's how do you manage these people to have alignment? And how can I get the best out of them so that they will add value to the business and not just wait for the dividend and then I don't care, I want to buy 6 cars or I want this parking space or I want 2 secretaries and I want to open an office in London because I like London. There has to be some governance, there has to be some agreement, there has to be some understanding of what will add value to the whole as a community. I mean, it's supposedly equivalent of a democracy. It's equivalent to a publicly listed company where you are accountable, all of us. Of course, not to go to the other extreme, you have to do this and do, but in a sense that the beauty of a family business, for example, is they can make decisions very quickly. The disadvantage of family business, if the founder and the patriarch or the matriarch is not there, then the decision becomes skewed. And I've seen it in many generations happening because interests change, jealousy comes in, egos come in, and so on. So provided you put the governance system properly, and I've done this in few of the family offices now, you can reduce that. You can never eliminate that because you cannot change people's attitude. You cannot change people's greed or disappointment or insecurities and so on. So when I tell my team is, at the end of the day, you're working with people. Because if it's just a system, I don't know why we're there. They just send us the information and we give them the software, basically. So it is very important to succeed, to understand the process, how people think, how they believe, what they expect, and get the most out of it. So you must have alignment, you must have clarity, and this way you can push forward together.
And have you ever had to pull the plug on a strategy internally at Prime that wasn't working? And if yes, what did you learn from pulling the plug?
Well, I mean, it's more working with clients who basically were sabotaging everything you do for the wrong reason. The same way I usually have initial meetings with clients. And if we don't have basic alignment on how we move forward, I will not take the job, irrespective how financially profitable it is. And sometimes, I mean, when I lose patience, I tell the client, this is what is going to happen if you don't do that. And usually, almost all the time, I'm correct. I mean, I worked with a group in healthcare that had lots of clinics and hospitals. And I said, look, I've done the basic research. And this is what you need to change. The CEO said, I know best. 2 years later, they're losing money, basically. And my concern is not just the same with Arab Tech, the same with all the construction group. It's not my concern is just that, you close down the business. My concern is that thousands of employees that will be unemployed, which is not fair on them. And more so, banks are lending you that will affect the whole banking system. During the crash in 2008, if you look at the bankruptcies that happened in the region, that's the equivalent of 40 banks going bust. In those days, we almost had 50 banks, And this is how I look at things, I'll put it within context. But there were many jobs that I said, this is not for me, although they were very financially lucrative if I stayed, because morally, I will not accept to take that job. It didn't make sense. And there's no point having a big argument with a client that says, I know best. And the ones I told them, if you don't behave, you go under, they're going under. We're talking turnover of hundreds of millions, I mean. So when you go under at that size, it's substantial. And I don't think it's right. But sometimes it's ego, it's ignorance, it's stupidity sometimes. I know best. Of course you do, it's your business, but listen to the point, then decide, and not just make a decision in vacuum.
And if we continue to look internally at Prime's strategy, what systems or processes have you put in place to make the execution half of consulting more reliable and repeatable?
Well, I mean, I usually, it's like everything else. I would plan the whole architecture of the project beforehand. What is it that we want? And we collect as much information in a format that people can understand. And what is not there, we define why it's not there and why we need it, so we can get the engagement of the client and so on. So the planning is very important for me, but not only me, the team. I can give that planning or part of the planning to some of the team members. They can do the same. And this is how I train them. So I train internally and I train the clients also to do so. And this is very important, the planning and understanding of what I call the 3D scanning of everything that is there before we go in, because we don't want to just go into a big pit and just disappear and not be able to get out of it. And it's not a matter of saving us, it's a matter of being understanding of what is there and helping the client. Otherwise, they get frustrated and we get frustrated and don't get anywhere. I mean, so it's very important that we understand what minefield we're getting into, because then you can cross it safely. Because any business that has issues, it's a minefield. Legal, financial, operational, HR, you name it. I want to make sure that we don't get into that stage. Otherwise, we will fail and they will fail. And I don't like to get into the blaming game. It's your fault. I know, let's agree. What is it? Forget about the fees and not fees. Now, one of the things that is very important for us in Prime is we don't just charge you per hour. We charge you per performance also. So I've been in projects where I say, right, I'll give you one example. Some of the clinics who I was advised, I was asked to advise on the initial meetings. The owner said, look, I have this clinic, we're doing a couple of $1 million. If I can get in 3 years' time, $20 million, I'll be a very happy man. And I said, maybe you should get an accountant to do this because it's too small for me. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I think I can build it and probably get you about $250 million for that. In return, I get an exit fee on that. And he said, that's great. And I was wrong. It wasn't at 250. We sold it at 600 million, because things have moved very quickly. And that partner left everything to me. The moment he stepped in later, I stepped out. I mean, we exited and so on. So this is very important to understand what you can deliver. And if you give them an incentive to hire you, the answer is, what have you got to lose? But initially, they have to trust you that you can do that.
And when scaling your firm, what process, design, decision ended up being more critical than you initially thought?
Well, I don't scale for the sake of generating revenue. I scale for the sake of generating more value in areas that I can understand and control. So I don't have thousands of consultants. I have tens of consultants that go in a strategic position and run hundreds of millions of dollars of businesses for them while training at the same time. So I'm there explaining, but I'm there teaching and I'm there mentoring. So technically, every staff member at every level is equivalent of a shadow chief of staff. They collect, they analyze, they instruct, they train, they manage. And at the end of the day, we don't have to be there all the time. Otherwise, we would have failed because they depend on us. I mean, in some cases, they hire some of our staff permanently. It's up to them how they do that because it's part of their career development. But this is how we do it. We must have that clarity. We must have that. And as I said, it's exactly where you need to use that screwdriver. It's not a matter of just building very complex machines, basically. So people ask me, I was giving a lecture a couple of weeks ago, and they said, how do you find yourself? I said, I'm the old-fashioned guy with a screwdriver. I go in and tune it, but I get a whole picture of what's done, and then I go in and fix it for you. So it's this, what I call, I used to use this expression, the Google Earth approach, where I can look at everything and turn it around and go down to the street level and see what is working and what's not working. This is how we do it. And this is where I believe my company adds value, but this is where I don't want to grow it to become a global player. I'm not interested in it. It's my hippie side coming in now, my corporate hippie side. I do what I like and I take what I need, and the rest I just give it to the universe.
And speaking about client acquisition, how do you win new clients in a space where many rely on reputation and relationships rather than outbound marketing?
Well, two things. I have my own reputation. People know me. I'm in the social media. I write books and I lecture. And I'm happy with that. I'm busy. I don't want to work more than 5 days a week. Preferably, I want to work 4 days a week, basically, so I can do my own philanthropy or writing or lecturing or teaching or mentoring. And I'm not at this stage in my life where I want to build an empire. I'm not interested in that. But I want to leave an impact. So if I can help others, if I can let them grow a business and they can have a happy life and do things, this is good enough for me. Maybe if I was 30 years younger, I'm 70 now. Maybe if I was much younger, probably I would have wanted to control the world and lead. But I'm not. Even when I was working with Booz Allen, I was happy just to do what is good and not, I didn't have, of course, I'm a very ambitious person, but I didn't want, I want to become the president or the chairman. To me, this doesn't matter. What matters is I can deliver quality for you and you're happy with it. And you say, Ziad delivered this for me, and therefore they come back. I get a lot of people calling me and says, we wanted to help us with this. And I usually respond to every single inquiry, unless it's rude or impolite. And I tell them, yes, I can help you, or I can't help you. So I don't just let people waiting.
So would you say that you rely mostly on referrals to open up new opportunities for you and the team?
Yes. To me, networking is very important. The network is just not connections. It's not just a list of telephone numbers. And people said, my most important asset is my phone because it has the network of everybody that is important that I can call, or they can call me, basically. But I do, of course, you have to do marketing, and marketing doesn't even have to be a sign or a page in a magazine. It is when you're sitting on a panel, or when they see you in the digital media, or they see you on LinkedIn or Instagram. I mean, I get lots of people say, because I have my own digital platform, because I believe I have something I want to share with people. I don't expect anything out of it, but the feedback is, please help us. We didn't think that you can do this, or you make it so simple. And I mean, I'm sure you've noticed that, and so on. So I mean, marketing, of course, is important, but marketing is not just a matter of putting a sign on a main highway. I mean, this is one way of doing it, but it's getting the message to the people who will say, that's interesting. I'll give you one example. When we were doing fertility clinics, everybody said we should advertise here, and there. I said, okay, explain to me, you're driving on the highway in Cape Town or whatever, and you see a big sign that says, if you're not having a child, come and talk to us. I said, this is now how it works. If a woman is not getting pregnant, she goes to her OB-GYN, basically, or to the family doctor and discuss it with her, if the husband also might go with her. So we need to concentrate on those, that we explain to them how we can help them. The second question, for example, why would a doctor refer their patients to you if they're going to lose them? So we say, no, we get them pregnant and send them back to you. These are the kind of interactions and the market that needs to be done. And in that case, we went from about 2 million revenue to about 40 million in 1 year in 2 clinics in Dubai. Then we went to 80 million, and we had a fantastic profit and so on. But also the client must come to you and they must feel comfortable. So we had a big, fantastic waiting room. We had 40 different kinds of sweets and coffee and magazines and entertainment, because you're there concerned and worried. Last thing you want is what will happen next. But again, the marketing is not just knowing that you get. The marketing is when you get to the reception. The marketing is when you're waiting. The marketing is when you sit with the doctor. The marketing is the follow-up. The marketing is the nurse coming and serving you and helping you and taking the blood or whatever it is that you want. So all these things are very important to me. And this is what I call the strategy. It's complex. Every bit has to fit in, and not just one part of it. So to me, marketing, of course, is important. But people knowing about you is important. Now, how we do it in marketing or in networking or in events or giving a speech or whatever, it doesn't matter. What's important is you have the right message to the right audience who would say, yes, I want to use that person.
And what would you say are the top objections that you hear from prospects when you're engaging with them? Let's say they're skeptical about cost, disruption, or maybe ability to execute.
If they start the conversation by saying you're too expensive for me to hire you without even discussing the value, then they're not my clients. Basically, I would say, you walk into a Rolls-Royce showroom and you say, but I can buy a Toyota. Well, don't be there in the first place. No one is forcing you to do so, So when people come in and say, but we can't afford to hire you, and I say, well, we haven't discussed what value you're expecting from me. So these are not the clients you want to work with. And you have another bunch of clients who would say they're hiring you just so you can agree with them. And I would say, well, no. If you know what you're doing, you don't need me. And if it's working for you, why the hell are you hiring me? Because obviously it's not working. So these are the kind of things that you will always face. You will always be challenged in a sense, but I know best. Good luck for you. I'm not the one that is having problems or cash flow issues or whatever. And we look at the numbers very quickly. I was in a meeting. We did this acquisition in one of the clinics like 2 months ago. And I was instructed not to give my views about anything because we have not signed with the client. And I couldn't just help it. And then I said, okay, Mr. CFO, can you show us the depreciation tables? He said, why? I said, because you have 4 clinics that are 8 years old. Depreciation is $2 million a month. It doesn't make bloody sense to me. He said, oh, maybe there's an error. I said, well, we have a problem if the CFO doesn't know if the numbers are correct or not. These type of things. But I'm told to shut up the first meeting because I'm part of another group. But if I see things and I try to link them if it makes sense or not, and if they don't, I try to question them. I could be wrong as an observation because I don't see the whole picture, but usually I'm not.
And how are you attracting, developing, and retaining top consulting talent, especially when you're competing against big global firms?
I don't have an issue. I get inquiries all the time. Can I work with you? basically, because they know what I've done, they know my personality, and I talk to them. I don't say go and talk to my HR director, because I have selected team. Look, I have a team of very effective, morally conscious mercenaries. They know exactly what needs to be done. They know exactly what the job is done, and they do it meticulously and effectively. And people know that. And if they cannot cope with this, being independent, focused, laser sharp consultants, we train them. But again, if they fail, it's like going to military school. You don't make the grade, sorry. Go and become a policeman or something. You know, if you want to be a military Marines, you have to train. You have to understand the thinking. You have to understand the strategy. You have to be aware. You have to interact. You have to trust. You have to depend. You have to go through the process, and you have to go in on your own occasionally. This is how we recruit.
And Ziad, what would you say is working exceptionally well inside your firm, whether that be processes, team dynamics, client success, something that you would replicate if starting again?
Well, it's my approach to how I explain things so that it fits. You know, I always start by explaining why we're doing this and what the value is. And I let the team or the partner or the consultant or whatever, they question me. Because if we don't have alignment, they're going to be an obstacle in my way, or I'll be an obstacle in their way. So there has to be this clarity and alignment so that they can go on their own. And if they have any questions, they can ask me. I mean, they can talk to me anytime, provided it's not midnight, for example. You know, I mean, I don't sleep much, and I write and do all sorts of things. So to me, this is very important. It's the of course, the technical knowledge is important, but it's the attitude and the way you look at situations. It's not just looking at one dimensional. I want it to be 3-dimensional all around. So you can have a look and say, and I always say, if you're in the middle of, I don't know, somewhere in the jungle and there's a tree, what do? You stay parked in there, or you try to find a different route? The tree is going to stay there forever, but doesn't give you a solution. So this is the kind of people I want. This is the kind of people I try to instill as a way of thinking. And this is how I train them to think. And most of them become amazing, successful executives. I mean, all my finance team, for example, and strategy team in the last 15 years, wherever they are, we meet annually, at least 4 or 5 times a year, and discuss things, because they love that. Even my old school friends that we were since kindergarten, we just had our 51st reunion now. You know, we talk about things and we explain things, and I find that extremely useful to build alignment, to build spirit, to build whatever it is. I mean, at any level. You know, even in my old businesses, when we had security businesses in Romania after the revolution, even the driver has to join me for dinner. You know, it's not that the driver doesn't know; it's part of the team. They have to deliver, they have to collect, they have to understand, and so on. And this sense of belonging and engagement makes a big difference on alignment and support, in my view.
And on the flip side of my question around what's working well, what would you say is not working well? What's a consistent frustration or bottleneck that you wrestle with?
Because people are not honest with you with their expectations. They go in and say, I want this salary, I want this package. Fantastic. What am I getting in return? You know, I'm more than happy. I mean, we have one doctor, one of the clinics. She's making technically $300,000 a month. And she said, yeah, but I want to make more. Fantastic. What am I getting out of it? Because on $300,000, I'm not getting a single penny. You know, tell me which doctor makes $1 million a month without, you know, because they're whatever it is. So we need to have that understanding that it has to be a return for me and a return for you, not just one-sided. Otherwise, it will not work. The same with the client, the same with me, the same with the employees, the same with everybody you work with. I mean, so unless there is that understanding and there is not a major mismatch in expectations, it will work. Otherwise, it will not work. It will not, because either that, you know, they worry about titles or ego or whatever it is. And, you know, so there is no alignment on expected value creation for me and for them and for the staff and the shareholders and the stakeholders and everybody else. How
are you using technology, data, or AI internally in your consulting and execution work?
A lot, especially in healthcare now. Fantastically well. We do a lot of diagnostics. We relate things. I mean, we're doing research that even universities are not doing, because I pushed the team and I said, I get the best doctors, let's say in the clinic in Athens now. And we say, right, we're going to call it the research hub. So when I sit down, I mean, I understand medicine, but I'm not a medical doctor. Because it's data, I'm data driven. So when I sit down with the labs, for example, say, we want this test. My doctor says these are the markers. What can we do? First. Second, what report do you produce? Because the client has to read it and they have to understand it and implement it. And this is where the mismatch, because, we only produce it. Well, then talk to me next. I want somebody to give me a report. So you and I, when we read it, to understand what it means, and not just science based on things that I don't understand to keep me intentionally in the dark. We don't do that. So this is very important for me. So we do it in every aspect. We do it in fund management. We do it in real estate. I mean, I was in a project yesterday where they're doing this amazing, unique real estate project. And I said to the developer, I said, okay, why would I pay $20 million if my neighbor can see me on top of my roof? Explain to me how. Oh, you're right. Okay, we'll do this. So we sat down with the architects and changed that. What kind of family has to live there? Is it a young family, or this is a party place? If it's a party place, are you going to invite other neighbors? How do we do that? How do we create a sense of community and exclusivity in that sense? So these are kind of things we go through all the time. And the team has to understand that, and the client has to understand that. Because the client only wants, give me a solution. Well, I don't know what the problem is, because you could be the problem, and there is no problem in the first place. It's the kind of thing that we do all the time.
And would you say that there's any tension that you face between bespoke advisory and scaling through technology?
Well, of course there is, because I think that knowledge is not there yet. When we go and look at software, everybody tells me this is the fantastic software to run your business. And when you try it, but there's a bit missing. No, we need to redesign the architecture together so that you will tell me, this is what I can provide till now, and this is what we need to develop together. So the question is, when I tell you, okay, let's develop together, what is it for me? Why would I help you develop something that you can use somewhere else? So where is the value for me? And we've done that in some of the software companies that we developed this. I mean, even in some of the tests that we do, we develop, we believe, besides the genomics on testing, because genomics has two things. It can give you predictability and it gives you probability. So if your family has cancer, we can most likely predict that most likely it will, but it doesn't mean it will happen. But also it gives you predictability because we still don't understand how the genomics works. I mean, each gene has, let's say, 52 switches. So we're talking about a billion combination. If I can understand every binary combination, then probably I can predict our things. But it doesn't mean that all the switches will work. So I should not make assumptions on that. And these are the kind of thing we need to go in and understand. What is it that we want? What is it that we can use? What is it that we can advance? So when we were sitting with the lab technicians, and we said, I want this test to be done this way with my medical team. And the medical team, yes, if we can do that, that'd be fantastic, because it gives us all these markers and their indicators. Now, the lab people say, but no one asked for that. Now, that's an answer you don't give me. You either give me, it cannot be done, let's find a way of doing it. But you can't tell me no one asked for that, because my answer is probably they're not as clever as me. This is why we're asking for it, and this is why we're looking for it, and there's a reason why we're asking to do so. So these are the kind of things, these are the kind of permutations, the probing, the diagnostic, the analytics, the markers that you have to look at in any business.
And if we look ahead at what's next for Prime, in the next 18 to 24 months, where are you pushing the firm? Are there new services? Are there new markets, new models?
Well, I think we have to definitely, what I call it, in the innovation sector. And innovation to me is not just one sector, it's using everything in a new way. So AI in medicine, AI in education, in analytics, in financial management, in asset management, in predictability. Because this is the new thing. The same with mobile phones. Mobile phones, it's let me call you first. Now I live my life on my phone. I eat, I order, I date, I learn, I educate, I entertain. So to me, this is the new sector that has to be done. And I mean, again, having said that, there's a whole process of education in people, use, market, social, and education that we have to do that. So there is an infinite. I mean, we had this meeting with the university at the board, and some of the press said, "Oh, we'll get our IT managers to develop the infrastructure." And of course, I laughed and was very rude and impolite. I said, "This is beyond what you can think. You know, not even Google or Apple can do this platform for us, because you're building an education system that will replace universities technically. You don't need a university anymore. The question is, how do we ensure the integrity of the information? And how do we grade these people to be able to become a doctor or a professor or a physicist or whatever? And how do you make sure they don't blow up the place, basically? You know, these are the kind of things that we challenge people. So I think innovation as in technology and AI and its application in everything we do on a daily basis, if it's analytics or asset management or strategy, this is the future. And this is where I go in and help them understand how to do it, and giving the right components to ensure we deliver or they get what they want.
And what does it look like for Prime to shift into that innovation space?
Easy. Because as I said, the whole approach is to become project managers more than just a solution provider. I mean, the solution is part of it, but it's the whole process of managing the process of learning and change and transformation that will get you there. But at the end of the day, you want the end user to accept and apply, because there's no point giving you a report in 6 months' time that you don't read. So to me, this is the future of consultancy. And I've seen big consultants go in and spend time, give you a detailed report. Most of it is, ChatGPT generated. It doesn't apply to me, because they didn't bother, because they want to make more money. They put a junior who doesn't understand the operation. So there has to be a balance on the operational team that understand the sector and the people and the business and what will work for them and how you can generate value for them. So me, that is the concentration. Part of it is coaching, part of it is mentoring, part of it is systems, part of it is policies and procedures. This is very easy, it's just to implement. I focus on the implementation side.
You obviously have a wealth of knowledge and you come with a ton of professional experience. I'm interested to understand your leadership style. When you face a tough, ambiguous decision, how do you approach it?
Well, I mean, it depends on how ambiguous. Is it because the person, or is it because situation, or is it because the background? I don't jump into a situation without some strategic planning. If I'm going to talk to you as a client, I'll do my homework on you beforehand. If I'm talking to you as a business, I do my homework on you. I see the sectors, I see the competitors. I don't go into battle unprepared. It's as simple as that. So it is unlikely that I will become a casualty out of that meeting or discussion. Most likely I'll come out with some value for me in that sense. So this is how I do it. I don't just go in and of course I listen, I talk, but ideally the same now. If you look at our customer journey in our clinics, we get all the information before they show up, because I don't want them to wait. I want to give them a solution. I want them to feel comfortable and I want them to engage with us. These guys are making my life easy and happy and so on. And this is how the thing is moving. And this is how I like to do things. I like to understand, I like to analyze, I like to observe, and I'd like to have some theory before I go in, if I don't have the complete theory about you when I go in. And this is where I think we will succeed always. And I want my staff and my team to think the same way. And they do, actually. They're amazing clones, but in their own way.
And how do you create clarity and alignment when the stakes are high and perhaps opinions diverge?
Well, I mean, I don't get emotional. If you tell me I want my share price to go up, and I say, why it's not going up? Explain to me. If you tell me exists, I'll give you an example. I mean, we have in our clinics in fertility, we're looking at some of the businesses now. When a patient comes in, they want to come out pregnant. But to come pregnant, we need to understand what is wrong. And to understand what's wrong, there are a whole series of tests that have to be done. The question is, which test do you do that makes value, to the 80-20 rule, and which ones are not necessary, but the doctor are doing just to make money out of it, right? But if we go in and say, look, a typical package has to include the following genetic test or the biological test or whatever it is, then we use that as a marker. When we go and do procedures in our operating theaters, we don't go in and say, okay, what do you need? No, I wanted to go in and say, I want to take my lunch bag with me because it has all the tools that I want there, because I don't want you to wait. I don't want the accountant to say, how many swabs did you use? How many injections do you use? No. For this procedure, I go in and say, I need X, Y, Z, and this is what I give you. It's as simple as that. Because then it'll help my billing, it'll help my invoicing, it'll help my, accountability of what it's done, and so on. And they argue, what if there are spares? I don't care because I already charge it. If I do, I'll give it to charity. Don't worry about that. This is the kind of thing that we're talking about. There has to be specific deliverables that we both agree that how we measure it and how it adds to the bottom line. Bottom line, it could be your life, it could be your friends, it could be your family, it could be your ex, it could be your wife. And this is where, it's very important for me to do so.
And if we look at the consulting and advisory landscape,
it's changing.
From a bit more from a macro perspective, yeah.
It's changing.
We've touched on this. How do you see it evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, the clients are more demanding because regulators are tougher. I mean, I'll give you an example now in healthcare in the UAE. The healthcare authority have realized that they have a declining population, so they created a Ministry of Family. But in return, all the not so professional clinics are coming out right at the center, pretending to be, let's say, an infertility. So the ministry is saying, okay, now we're going to judge you on the quality of your implantation. So look, I've tried and it failed. No, we need to know why it failed, basically. So we can't just pay you for trying. We pay you for success. So things are moving. And if you're not ready for that, you'll run out of business. This voodoo medicine has to stop. This unethical practice has to stop. So things are moving in that sense. And I think this is what will happen in consulting in general. The ultimate regulators are going to say, rightly or wrongly, these are the rules, but you need some guidance to push you to reorganize and become more efficient, in my view. So.
And what role do you see Prime strategy playing in that shift?
Well, helping the clients understand, helping the regulators to really understand. You can't just come up with a list that doesn't make sense. And there has to be the transformational part. And I think our value is preparing and transforming more than just writing a set of rules. Set of rules, anybody can write them. But we want to make sure that they work. There's no point telling people, if they're obese and overweight and have whatever that you have to run a marathon in 2 hours, they will die. Simple. So you have to come up with a solution that is manageable, workable, effective, and doable by both stakeholders. Because there's no point saying, I want everybody to be fit and healthy if they're genetically disabled. What can you do? So we can't just, say, but this is the ultimate solution. No. This is something we can aspire to, but practically it doesn't work, So these are the kind of thing where we go in and see what works and make it work in the best possible way. And I think consultancy has to be that eventually. And not all of it is there. I mean, most of it is just, this is what worked in the US, or this is what worked in Europe, or this is what worked at X. Therefore, copy and paste. I mean, we're in a meeting, and one of the advisors on certain things, even the presentation was addressed to the wrong company. They didn't even bother to change the name on the opening presentation, which to me is unforgivable. How can I trust you that you're going to give me something specific if you can't even remember my name, really? And this, it's an oversight. No, this is sheer unacceptable behavior, basically, because that removes trust that, it's a cut and paste and it doesn't work for me. You don't understand what I need.
And Ziad, if our listeners and viewers want to connect with you, where's the best place for them to do that?
I mean, on the email, they can write to me at Ziad.Makhzoumi at Prime SCG, Prime Strategy Consulting Group, or through the website, or on LinkedIn or on Instagram, and I always respond. provided it's not a rude comment or a joke. I mean, I always respond. But I mean, we are accessible, and I like people to come to me and they feel they can come to me, and not just to the team or the marketing people or whatever it is. I mean, I hate inquiries ads. It makes it so unreal, unpersonal. So, but they can write to me on LinkedIn. They can write to me on the website. They can Google me. I mean, I'm sure there are many pages on Google about me. So.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It's been a fascinating inside look into Prime. I really have valued the conversation. I wish you all the best, and we'll keep an eye on the trajectory of the company.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.